Hey, so I just recently hit Celestial rank in the first half of Season 1 and wanted to share some of the things I learned and did on my rank journey. I was also GM in Season 0. If you're looking for hero-specific tips and guides, I won't be doing that here, as there are plenty of amazing one-trick players out there making those more in-depth coverage. I instead will be giving out a broader stroke of information that should apply to everyone playing, ranging from simpler, basic, obvious ones to more advanced things, so that hopefully everyone watching this vid can find something useful to them. There will be 4 segments in this vid, starting with general overall gameplay tips, and then moving on to tank, DPS, and lastly support. So feel free to skip to the segments that mostly applies to you, but I wouldn't recommend that, as hearing things about roles you don't often play can help broaden your knowledge and understanding. Alright, let's get into it with general tips. This might be a strange thing to say, and I don't know how much this will resonate with you, but you don't have to play every day to climb. In fact, this may help you climb more efficiently. I'm going to be real with you, I work a 9 to 5, and some days I'm just straight exhausted after work. Playing when you're tired is a surefire way for you to play worse. You have less awareness, slower reaction times, worse aim, be easier to get frustrated, the list goes on. Some days I only have an hour or 2 to play, so I want to be the most efficient I can when getting those games in, and so I generally only play if I'm feeling like I have the energy to do so that day. I'm currently sitting at a 64.2% win rate in ranked doing so, which is a fairly decent, which brings us into this next tip. I learned this from my League of Legends days, but be aware of the 40-30-30 rule. What this rule means is that 30% of the games you play, you will lose no matter what you do, because you just rolled the dice badly with teammates. 30% of them you will win no matter what, because you had the best teammates ever, and the final 40% is you being the difference in winning those games. Taking that into account, if you win even just half the games you make a difference, that gives you a 50% win rate, and that's all you need to do to climb. I've seen people in Grandmaster with a 47 to 49% win rate. Marvel Rivals is quite forgiving in how many points you can gain compared to how much you can lose. Remember, if even the top players on the ladders can still lose, then it shows that not every game is winnable, and that's fine. Over the course of many games, you will definitely climb, as the statistics will do its work. This brings us into the next point, which is mentality. A stronger mental will definitely help you play better. Accepting that some games you will lose will ease the tell from losing games. It should already be obvious, but when you play tilted or frustrated, you will play worse, and this can leak into your team. Don't blame your teammates, even if you have the most atrocious ones. Everyone would definitely be playing worse with team members arguing with each other. It just brings the mood down even more. Let the game finish, avoid the player, done deal, and move on to the next. Remember the 30% rule. You will lose regardless of how well you play. You will see bad players, you will see good players have off games or players on roles they're not just comfortable with, and that's fine, just move on. But if you do get tilted, just stop playing and have a breather. No one is immune to tilt. It's better to have a break and come back when you're at a more normalized mental state, even if it's the next day. This next one should be quite obvious, but use your mics. This one will help improve your game so much. Even if you're a shy guy, that's completely fine. Just make callouts where it's needed, even if it's just repeating one character's name over and over again. If you're playing support and there's a Black Panther, Venom, or Spider-Man just jumping you, call it out. The reality is that people will have varying levels of awareness. Would you rather silently die as you watch none of your team members turn around to help you, or call it out so they're at least aware that it's happening at the moment? When you see a Psylocke hiding on the roof up high, call it out, even if you think people should see her. You'd be surprised by how much this helps the team. Everyone is focusing on something and can't always be looking around. A very common call out to do that's extremely useful is just calling to focus someone when they're low. Having teammates turn to look for that person to finish them off and making sure they don't get healed back up or escape wins games. These small things are what contributes to you making a difference in winning more games. This one is simple, but destroy things. What I mean by that is destroy walls and maps and destroy abilities that characters put down always. There are many maps where you will benefit greatly from breaking walls. I'll use Shin Shibuya as this example. At point 1 here, you can break this wall on the left, reducing your choke point, as well as break this top building when pushing so that they have more difficulty standing on high ground to shoot down on you. After all, in shooter games, no matter what, having the high ground is always going to be better. Or in Burn into T'Challa, at the point you can break down these pillars, giving easy access to high ground and places to move in and out of. As for character abilities, if you spot a penny mine generator, destroy it. Name more turrets, destroy it. Moon Knight Unk should be obvious. Doing these things will deactivate a portion of their kit and all serves to countering these heroes. I'm sure this next tip is mentioned a lot, but I'll bring it up anyway. Find your perfect mouse sensitivity. This goes back to my Counter-Strike days, but for me, I've always played with 800 DPI, and to find my perfect in-game sensitivity, what I do is to put my mouse all the way on the left on my mouse pad and drag it all the way to the right, making sure that that's one full 360 rotation, or close enough. This is because I find that aiming by moving your whole shoulder and mouse around the pad will give you better precision than only rotating your wrist. This is what's always worked for me for years, but you have your own method, go for it. This leads into crosshair. Look, personally, I don't really believe in the whole having a perfect crosshair set up per individual hero, but if it works for you, go for it. Personally, I have just been using this one crosshair and it's set up like this in my settings if you want to copy it. I have it at a diagonal because I find that when I shoot someone, these hit markers appear and it's super noisy on my screen if I have the default horizontal and vertical lines. The green is also so my crosshair stands out in a game filled with red color targets. Alright, let's talk about heroes. Personally, I don't believe in one-tricking a hero. Yes, you may get quite good at this one hero, but as you get higher, you will get target banned as there's less and less players. This also reduces your flexibility as a player while you're climbing. You will get teams where you will meet people who can only play DPS or tank or support, and having the ability to combinate them by being able to play well in another role will help you win more games. This is to do with a 40% difference rule. I'm not going to tell you to stop one-tricking heroes if that's what you find fun, but personally it's not for me, and I think it would take a lot longer to climb doing so. In this game, for example, 3 tanks were banned. Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Magneto. 3 of the staple meta tanks, so fortunately as I bothered to learn most of the tanks, I was still able to play Groot and net a close win. Still, on the topic of heroes, even though the roles are tank, DPS, and support, in each of those roles there are sub-archetypes of tank, DPS, and support, and knowing what they are will help you do your role better. For Vanguard, you have defensive war type heroes, and then offensive harass tanks. The defensive ones are Doctor Strange, Groot, Magneto, and Penny, while the offensive ones are Captain America, Hulk, Thor, and Venom. The defense tanks specialize in more back-to-front fight types where you protect your team more, while the offensive ones specialize in creating backline disruption, like diving enemy supports and DPS. For the Duelist role, there are snipers, dive, defensive, and sustain type, and then the outlier half, which is Mr. Fantastic, just chilling by himself. The sniper DPS are Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hela, and Winter Soldier, where your roles to stay in the mid to long range and do high bursts of damage to take out people quickly. This is suitable for killing any roles in the game. The dive DPS are Black Panther, Iron Fist, Magic, Spider-Man, Psylocke, Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, and Wolverine, where your role is to get in close to the backline and take out the support DPS. With these characters, you'll generally be operating more alone and using health relics more as healing, as you look for flank angles to efficiently take out people, with the slight exception of Wolverine, where his goal is to kidnap tanks and take them into their team. The defensive DPS are Moon Knight, Namor, and Swirl Girl, which excel most in a defensive playstyle countering dive, especially Namor with a Lunar Snow team up, though Moon Knight can also assassinate people by off guard catching them with an Unk combo. Lastly, the sustain type DPS that reliably dish out constant damage and usually end up with the most damage are Star-Lord, Punisher, and Storm. You create constant pressure on all types of characters, where if the enemy healers slip up and not pay attention, you will be able to get picks and eliminate anyone from any role. As a strategist, just like Vanguard, you only have offensive and defensive types. The offensive type strategists are Adam Warlock, Jeff, Loki, Mantis, and Rocket Raccoon, where your kit and ultimate revolves around keeping up the pressure by overwhelming them in offensive resources. On average, you will heal less than defensive type strategists, as you are able to dish out more damage than them. The defensive strategists are Cloak and Dagger, Invisible Woman, and Lunar Snow. This is due to their ultimate allowing your team to survive most things and be borderline invincible during it while having constant healing. Using the right characters in the settings they excel in most would generally make the game go smoother for you. As of right now in Season 1, first half, 2 Vanguard, 1 Duelist, 3 Strategists, or 1 Vanguard, 2 Duelist, 3 Strategists is extremely strong, as long as the 3 Strategists is composed of 2 defensive type strategists, with the third being an offensive type, as they are able to give more healing to the team while providing ample offensive pressure. Of course, not every game is going to go like this, as you will run into all sorts of people who want to play specific heroes even if they're off meta, so being able to identify what it is they're playing and building a cohesive type of comp that complements each other is important. The last general tip I want to give is keep practicing your aim skills. The reality is that this is still a shooter game, and every role will still benefit from being able to aim well, as every role has characters that can do a lot of damage when you hit your shots. You'll be surprised how much damage Vanguards can do, or even strategists like Mantis and Adam Warlock landing those hits. Even strategists like Lunar Snow, you are required to aim at your allies, and she is quite a strong strategist as of right now if you know how to play it well. The only thing I really do to practice my aim is to go into the practice range over here as Punisher with infinite ammo turned on, and put on these settings, and give it a 4-minute-ish warm up before I jump into a ranked game. Alright, time to get into more role-specific tips I learned, starting with Vanguard. At the moment, if I were to quickly rank the Vanguards, I would say S tier is Magneto, Doctor Strange, and then Hulk. A tier is Groot, and then Thor if you find a really good Thor. Otherwise, he would probably be sitting in B tier with Venom, Penny, and Captain America, with Penny as the lowest in the B tier. Realistically, you can make any of these tanks work, even if the B tier ones are in the right situation, and if you put a lot of time into learning the nuances. But I rank these based on the character's relevance and usefulness in most games on average. There's a very useful setting that I keep on when playing Vanguard, and this is to see ally health bars. You can turn it on here, and it is extremely important to be constantly aware of positioning as a Vanguard in the situation of the team. Fall back if your team is low and trying to recover to help them, and push forward to make space when everyone is fairly healthy. If you're in a defensive war style tank, this is fairly straightforward. Basically protect your team, turn around and help your DPS and support players if they're getting jumped by dive. But if you're an offensive tank which haven't left your team yet to do your backline harass run, help out your backline if they're getting dove. But if you are out there in the fields, you just gotta jump their supports and DPS and pray your team team is better at staying alive than their support players. With positioning, utilize walls and cover well. Stick near the walls where you can fall back on when you drop low, and always be aware where your healers are so that they can keep you up, or you don't overextend out where they can't reach you unless you have a way of getting back to them. Taking damage is actually good as a Vanguard, but you also don't want to die doing so. As of right now, Strategist ultimates are extremely strong, so the more damage you take, you give your Strategist something to heal, which will allow them to get the ultimates up quicker, which can give your team the major upper hand. Needless to say, you also need to hit your shots, as this will also speed up getting your ultimate as a Vanguard way quicker. For every map as a Vanguard, it is important to clear high ground before moving down, and for convoy defense specifically, you need to make enough pressure to be able to stand on the convoy to get it to stop moving. If your entire team's eliminated and you're last one standing, you want to stall and stay alive on the point so they can't cap it back, but don't stay alive too long as well, as you don't want to stagger deaths too far apart since you want your team to regroup. This will only happen in higher level play where the enemy may intentionally leave you alive longer if you're not creating enough pressure on the point, preventing them from capping. If you have the luxury of 2 tanks, even as the war tank, you can create a lot of pressure on DPS and healers if they overextend. Magneto, for example, can remove someone with a left click, right click, left click 2 times combo, or Strange with 100 energy charge fairly easily. Bad Vanguards will just let you walk past them to run into the backline as you wipe them out. It's extremely important to create this pressure, as if the attention is on you and not your team, you're doing your job right. Healers and DPS do their best when they're not getting focused. This is even more relevant on offensive oriented Vanguards. Your entire goal is to create as much pressure in the backline as possible while staying alive. Your ideal scenario is that no one turns around to help them and you get free picks, but if they do, it's okay to leave, even if you don't get a pick. What's important is that you create enough pressure for the healers to not be able to heal their team, and resulted in them having to fall back or turn around to deal with you, making space for your team to move forward. Onto Duelist tips. Right off the bat, I'm going to say, your goal as a Duelist isn't to deal as much damage as humanly possible. Your goal is to eliminate plays in the most efficient manner possible, and damage is a tool to do that. Sustain type damage dealers are the hardest to do this, as part of their role is to create constant offensive pressure. The reason I say that is that doing damage that doesn't end with an elimination becomes health for strategists to heal, advancing their ultimates, which are the current strongest ultimates in the game. This is why you would see sometimes a Punisher and a Turret blasting the enemy, and their supports suddenly are able to offensively push with their ult when you see your healers are still only on 60% ult. Commit your shots with the intention to eliminate, but if your enemies are so far away that eliminations are extremely unlikely, then it's not worth it to shoot them. For sustained type damage specifically, you will need to create this offensive pressure, so it's more about keeping that pressure up and hitting majority of your shots to finish them off with the help of your team. And this is where using a might to call for target focus is really important. For Duelists, it's hard to not get into specific hero tips, as they are among the more mechanically intensive types of characters for some, and the only way to do well on them is to actually learn the nuances of that hero to get good. So if you want to be a Duelist main, learn those characters, and keep in mind the sub-archetypes of Duelist to counter or swap your opponents, and get really good at what your character's archetype is meant to do. As for ranking the Duelists at the moment, S tier would be Storm, Wolverine, Namor, Moon Knight, Star-Lord, and Iron Man if he's Gamma upgraded. A tier would be Hawkeye, Hela, Magic, Punisher, Winter Soldier, Psylocke, Black Panther. B tier, Black Widow, Iron Fist, Iron Man non-upgraded, Squirrel Girl, Spider-Man. C tier, Mr. Fantastic and Scarlet Witch. I always say this for every segment, but always be aware of where your team is. There is no point, for example, to be at Magic that suddenly tries to run into their backline when your team can't follow up and create pressure from their side because they're too far away, and you end up being eliminated for nothing. Pay attention to where your supports are to make it easier for them to heal you. Don't be that guy heavy line assigning all your supports while spam pinging the heal me button. Just like Vanguard as well, help out your backline support if they're getting dove. Hitting your shots and combining them with ally target focus will generally remove the backline problem, and if you're still struggling, Namor with Luna is the strongest anti-dive combo. As a Duelist, you'll always need to track enemy support ultimates. As of Season 1, first half, it's even more important, as it's almost free for you to steamroll through them. For example, if you're Storm and the enemy has no support ults to counter ult you. If you're doing your job extremely well and you're pressuring from your base kit alone, you will be able to force out enemy support ults without committing your ult. If you feel like you can get the kill with the ult and catch them off guard still, which is the role of some like Spider-Man or Namor, then go for it. If they can't react fast enough to you, it's always worth it to just full send. In the worst case scenario, they will just counter ult you, reducing how many support ults they have compared to your team. Lastly, onto Strategists. As mentioned earlier, there are 2 archetypes of Strategists, offensive and defensive. Ideally, you want 2 defensive strategists with 1 offensive in this meta. It won't happen every game, but it's the ideal scenario. For strategists, I would rank S tier's Cloak and Dagger, Invisible Woman, and Luna Snow. A tier, Loki, Mantis, and Rocket Raccoon. B tier for Jeff, and C tier Adam Warlock. I am a certified Adam Warlock hater. I think he has barely any survivability and barely dishes out healing as is. He does damage, but I don't think he can offset the value he brings compared to having any of the A tier supports or even Jeff as defensive strategist. I think I've only seen two good Adam Warlocks at this rank. Playing Strategist is either going to be the roughest game in your life or the most chill. There is no in between. I've played Strategist the second most, and I know you're just going to have games where you verse triple dive and get next to no help from your team and you're kiting for your life as they spam ping heal me, or you're going to get games where no one focuses you whatsoever, or your teammates are the best bodyguards you ever seen, as a Magneto protects you just at the right time, or a Doctor Strange just also walks to shield you. Okay, let's actually talk about gameplay plans as a strategist. Above all else, your priority is to stay alive. If you're eliminated, the team will crumble really quickly. Next up is keeping tanks alive and then DPS. When the tank falls, the enemy team will quickly run you down with no wall in their way. Unfortunately, you will be put into scenarios where you see everyone low and you're forced to make hard choices where you can't keep everyone up, but if you keep the priority order in healing, it's the best you can do even if you get flamed by DPS. But generally, only the bad players will have no awareness of what you see, so it's best to ignore them. Of course, some strategists will be able to multi-heal easier, like cloak dropping a heal sphere in one location while healing another, or invisible per barrier to heal DPS while focusing on tanks, so making full use of your kit is important. For awareness and positioning as a strategist, you always want to know where everyone in your team is. You'll need to be spinning your camera quite a bit to constantly check to make sure someone isn't just waiting on a side needing healing. Play backwards and use cover well so that you're line of sighting their Duelist and Vanguard where possible. Position in a manner as well where you can maximize a healing, like if you're Luna or Invisible Woman, you want a primary fire to go through as many people at once as possible. The more you heal, the faster you get your ultimates. If you skip the starting part, then I will iterate that strategists currently have the most valuable ultimates in the game. This leads into what I say next, is that currently as strategist, you're basically playing chess with the enemy strategist with your ultimates. You need to keep tracking the ultimates and make sure you counter ultimate to keep your team alive when they use theirs. Communicate with your fellow strategists who's going to ult first so that you don't stack them, especially who's going to ult first in a panic situation, like a storm ult appearing right on top of you. As Luna or Mantis, let your team know when your ultimate's about to end so they know, like giving them a heads up that it's ending in 2 or 3 seconds. Adding on for some ways to stay alive when you get dove as well, every strategist has a way to extend their life. Make sure to have these abilities available if you know you're versing dive type characters. Adam Warlock has Soul Bond, Cloak has Heal Orb and disappear into the other realm, Visible Woman has Double Jump or Pushback, Luna can freeze and Mantis sleep. It's up to you to know what your strategist can do. I may have missed some things I can't remember right now, but that's about it for my general tips that should hopefully help you in not just this season, but for the oncoming seasons as a fundamental skills. As of right now, there should be roughly 6 days left before the mid-season rank lock-in, so good luck with your climb and hope you're able to learn a thing or two here. If you have any more specific questions, just leave them out in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them.